moving forward, it is going to be a little more difficult to evaluate each comic because at this point in the series, Civil War II had started to slow down, meaning that the issues were coming out spaced even further, and a lot of that were just personal reasons with people working on the project. And due to that, the series, which was supposed to end around October, November, actually did not end until the end of December. So you're going to notice that the tone is probably going to be dropping just a little bit, which really hurts a big series like this because the tension, the weight, the seriousness, the characters, the plot, it all has to be able to hold it over from start to finish. And you run the risk of really diluting it when you space it out too long over time. So with that being said, let's get into issue number 4. We begin this issue as we see Captain Marvel flying to the Triskelion to finally talk to She-Hulk. Before the issue started, she had just come out of her coma. So the two chit-chat for a little while until Captain Marvel has to break the news of the death of Bruce Banner, her cousin, at the hands of Hawkeye to her. Also telling her that Hawkeye was arrested and was put on trial for his crimes. The following page is an extremely creepy 3-shot of She-Hulk staring at Carol Danvers, and I gotta tell you right now, I'd probably be pissing myself because this is some scary, scary stuff. Oh man, I would feel bad pissing her off in a relationship. Let me just leaving that there. And it is on the following page after we see She-Hulk asking what the outcome of the trial was that we discover that, in fact, Hawkeye had been acquitted of all the charges.
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
On the following splash page, we also see Spider-Man just kind of hanging out on the side of a building as we see several caption bubbles from the people on the ground below talking about the trial, saying various things like, you know, the overwhelming support of the verdict was 80%, meaning that 80% of the people are in favor of the Hulk being dead, which kind of makes you have to wonder why so many people are in favor of this when we discovered in the last issue he hadn't had an incident in about a year, so one would have to wonder how long it takes people to get over this kind of thing.
You're so stupid!
And also the big question being that how come there's been no statement from the superheroes? We then have Tony Stark sitting in a dark room talking to an unknown source about how he feels with all of his friends being killed and also his falling out with Captain Marvel. I will say this is actually nice instead of just having him and Carol bickering because that's run its course. We're 4 issues in. No fighting, like no actual Civil War fighting based off the first series and just had those two arguing. And all because Carol's doing everything that she was sworn to do and Tony just has trust problems. But like I said numerous times, we're going to get to that later. But anyway, he does state that while in uniform as an Avenger, that he feels that the future, it just can't be written, hence his problems ultimately with Ulysses and his visions. He just does not believe them to be 100% true. He then states that he downloaded a copy of his brain while he had him while he kidnapped him basically, with the purpose of proving Tony wrong, aiding even more with his issues of trust. He then says that Ulysses was in fact a portal to the future, which that he theories of the Avengers involving space and time were correct, and that hoping that Ulysses was right in order to ease his own problems, but in fact what he found was a lot worse. However, during this speech, we also see Captain Marvel and the Avengers arresting a random woman due to yet another vision from Ulysses. And then when they do arrest her, they search her briefcase while Tony is expositing about the mind of Ulysses. Yeah, it's going back and forth between the two. It's actually done really, really well. So, explanation-wise, kind of feels like it's a little disjointed, but it actually does work. Tony discovers that the visions are not visions of the future, but rather a possible futures, quotation marks, just an algorithm. He continues more about his findings, how the visions were correct, but rather not the conclusions of them, which I did find to be really, really interesting because it suggests more of a profiling of a future rather than anyone submitting their personal choice, meaning that these visions are basically a best guess, but they don't have a correct solution, which I did find to be extremely interesting. But again, There is a massive problem with this once we get into the final issue, so later. And again, while this is going on, Captain Marvel is seeing this random woman being carried away as she opens up the briefcase only to discover nothing, much to Ulysses' surprise. Tony continues to go on about how Ulysses' powers, as they grow, do they continue to become more powerful since they falsely predicted the Hulk killing everybody. He wonders when it will all stop and if Carol continues to follow him blindly without thinking first. He stops and asks whomever he's speaking to stop him if they do disagree with him and what he's saying, especially since after all these years he is going to listen to Steve Rogers, which was pretty funny. As we all cut to our hero sitting at a table listening to Tony this entire time. Tony then states that he wouldn't be saying all of this if he didn't actually believe it. Danvers claims she will only trust the data after the Beast looks at it, as she clearly does not trust Tony's info. Beast says he already checked the data, answering that his data isn't wrong. Tony then asks Carol what she plans to do knowing what she knows now. She still sticks to her guns, however, saying that even if the percentages are low, she would still go to any lengths to prevent any danger, and that even Rhodes would agree with her. She ends her speech abruptly by leaving, going straight through the ceiling, because I'm sure a door was not readily available. Tony laments about this, and that then deciding that they do now have to go public, much as the urging of Medusa. Back over at the Triskelion, we see that Director Hill is questioning the lady that was arrested earlier in the comic as Captain Marvel watches on through a two-way mirror. She is asked what the initial vision of the civilian was that led her to being arrested. In the next page, we see that Carol questioning her and claiming that this lady is in fact a high-ranking official from Hydra and she plans to hold her here indefinitely. Yeah, this came right after she was told that her background check was totally clean, so clearly we are led to believe that Danvers is reaching for anything right now to prove that Ulysses' vision of her being a Hydra agent was in fact true. She leaves the room and goes to talk to Maria Hill. She notices that the woman is gone almost immediately after she leaves, and a cloud of purple smoke remains, which automatically leads to her to conclude that it was Nightcrawler, and that Tony Stark is to blame for this, and that he will be arrested. Hill then proclaims she wouldn't have to go too far, as they have discovered that Stark is on the roof of the building, so good and convenient for him. We cut immediately to the rooftop as we see Tony, as well as the rest of the Avengers, tell Marvel that he has told her and warned her multiple times. Carol immediately declares that Stark is under arrest. He says that when he goes public with everything that she has done, that she in fact will have her hands full. Carol interrupts to remind Tony of him just breaking into the Triskelion and kidnap a prisoner will also have its ramifications. Stark then explains that he doesn't tell her how to run her business, but from where he stands, that she is drastically outpowered. Our comic ends with Carol's reinforcements arriving from the skies as we now have a new challenger enter the arena as the Guardians of the Galaxy have arrived to help out Captain Marvel. So I know a lot of you are probably wondering, hey Eric, why did you skim through this pretty fast? This is a lot shorter than the other issues. Well, the reason is because this issue, while it does make some improvements, it also makes a lot of problems along the way. Number one, there were a lot of splash pages in here. The dialogue boxes were very minuscule, and ultimately there's really not a whole lot to break down. We have the aftermath of the trial, as well as the conclusion and the verdict. We have the constant back and forthing of the Inhumans, because one minute they're ready to kill Tony Stark, and on the next minute they're siding with him because I guess now he has the option to talk about what's going on. So it's fairly safe to conclude that everyone's very hot-headed and they really don't know what to do. I gotta say, this issue was a long time coming. This really should have happened in issue 3. Like, if they could have really trimmed the fat in issues 2 and 3 and incorporated this in there, it would have been a far superior issue, but they didn't. And the other problem is that there were just way too many splash pages. The conversation that Tony had as he was talking to his friends, it went way too long. The then dialogue that Captain Marvel was having after she had found out about Stark's data was completely pointless. And honestly, at this point, this is where the lines are officially being drawn. Because from this point forward, you cannot... It's not going to switch. Because at the beginning, you could argue that it was Tony Stark going off the rails, but now it's pretty much switched as, and now Carol is being extremely unwilling to listen to any kind of reason. She's dead set in her ways. Now, in one aspect, that's really good, whereas in the idea of having to fully understand what's going on, and in the position that she is in, working with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, you have to wonder exactly when the give and take begins, meaning that she needs to give a little. So, we finally have the stage set as we head into issue number 5, and we get the fighting that we finally get. That's right, we're halfway through this series, and the fighting is just going to begin in the next issue. You can wonder why I skimmed through a lot of this, because I'm eagerly waiting to get to issue number 5. But friends, it doesn't end there. Oh no, we still have 4 more issues, and believe me, it just gets more complicated as it goes on. So please come check that out the next time as we go into issue number 5, as well as we learn of another character's timely demise.